All right, good morning, everybody. It's 9:01 a.m. on Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. I will call this meeting of the Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley Board of Directors meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Board Member Chuck McMahon is not here. Board Member Eric Enriquez.
Here.
Board Member Diana Murillo Trujillo is absent. Board Member Yvonne Flores.
Here.
Board Member Lynn Ellens is absent. Board Member Tessa Abeda Stuve.
Here.
And Board Member Manny Sanchez.
Present. And I will note, we also have, I believe, Mary Lou Ward from the county sitting in for Mr. McMahon as an ex officio member from the county.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda? Does not look like any. So can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Flores and seconded by Vice Chair Betistuvi. Are there any comments, input? Seeing none, can we get a roll call on the approval agenda?
Sure. Board Member Enriquez.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Ward.
Yes.
Board Member Betastuve.
Yes.
And Board Member Sanchez.
Yes. Okay, the agenda is approved. We're now on to agenda item number 3, the meeting minutes, the approval of the minutes from the regular ASCMV board meeting held on June 24th, 2021. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Flores and seconded by Vice Chair Betistuvi. Are there any input on the minutes from the June 24th meeting? Okay, seeing none, can we get the roll call, please?
Board Member Enriquez.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Ward.
Yes.
Board Member Betastuve.
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez.
Yes. Okay, the minutes are approved.
I'm sorry. Is there
Good.
any way I can go back and take back my yay, whatever? May I just make a...
Go ahead, Councilor Flores. What were you looking at on the meeting minutes?
Yeah, I was looking at the minutes, and on page 6, line 6, item 2, the executive committee report, Manuel Sanchez, committee chair, and then it says Chair Vasquez stated. So that should state Chair Sanchez.
I see, yeah, is it line 27 on page 6?
No, sir.
Oh, I see it on,
Page 6.
okay, I see it, actually, I missed
It's line
that.
6. Oh, pardon. Yes, it is line 6, and it's item 2. The number 2. Does anybody else have this printed version? But you understand, Becky? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. We'll get that taken care of. We will take care of it.
So
right
how do
here.
we undo the vote, Mr. Chair?
I don't think you need to undo the vote, ma'am. You can just say that we've added an amendment, and this amendment will be to make that change, and then vote on that. I think you'll be okay with that.
Okay.
Mr. Ellens has arrived.
So do I move to, there has to be a motion to undo what we just voted on.
So we need a motion to, I believe, reconsider the meeting minutes of June 24th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All right, the reconsideration was moved by Vice Chair Betistuvi, seconded by Councilor Flores. And then can we get a roll call on that?
Certainly. Board Member Enriquez? Yes. Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens? Yes. I'm going to need you on the microphone, sir, please.
Yes.
Thank you. And you have to turn it back off again because, thank you. Board Member Ward? Board Member
Yes.
Betastuve?
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez?
Yes. Okay, so we're now.
So now we have a motion we need a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Yes.
So I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Okay, and that,
Second.
okay. And just for clarification, that amendment is to correct the Chair Vasquez to Chair Sanchez.
Correct.
Okay, and it's been properly motioned and second. Is there any input on the motion to approve the minutes as amended? Okay, seeing none. Okay, call the roll.
Board Member Enriquez? I need your microphone on. Thank you. Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens?
Yes.
Board Member Ward?
Yes.
Board Member Betastuve?
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez?
Yes. Okay, the meeting minutes are approved as amended. We're getting a workout here between our roll calls. All right, we're on to reports and presentations. Agenda item 4A, City and County ACO reports. So, all right, we'll have, with Mary Lou coming down, we'll have the county up first. Good morning, Mary Lou. Having you pull double duty today?
Good morning. Mary Lou Ward, Animal Control Supervisor for Doña Ana County. And I'm going to go ahead and start with our June statistical reports for the board. So as we have been reporting in the past months and years, we'll go ahead and do our monthly reports. So looking at our reported strays, for the month of June, we had 346 reported stray animals. Out of those 346, we picked up 132 animals. 46 of those were cats and 86 of those were dogs. In addition to those, we also picked up 22 sick or injured animals. 13 of those were cats and 9 of those were dogs. We also picked up 6 owner surrender animals. And those, out of those, 6 of those were, all 6 of them were dogs. So as we do our yearly comparison, we have a 4-year comparison chart on our reported strays. As you can see, our reported strays for last month compared to the month before has gone up tremendously. I think that's a lot of it's due to the release of everybody being out in the open, the quarantine, everybody's out, everybody's reporting everything. So I think that a lot of that has to do with that. So 346 compared to last month. But you can also compare that to the years before. Of course, 2020 is a special year because a lot of us were inside and in quarantine. So going and looking into our return to owner chart, in June, we returned 26 animals to their owners in the field. And then looking at the other yearly comparisons, you can see how that compares throughout the years. Going into the additional animals picked up, as we talked about earlier, on the owner surrenders, we had 6 dogs. Sick or injured animals, we had 22. We also picked up 1 welfare hold and 6 shelter quarantines. I did go ahead and leave this part in there as a reference guide, and I'll continue to do so, just so we can go back to it as a reference. So dividing that further into our districts on our stray animals that were picked up, you can see what was picked up by each district. District 2 had 2, District 1 had 2, District 2 had 16, District 3 had 29, District 4 had 47, 5 had 13, 6 had 4, and 7 had 21. So you can see where hot areas are and where we need to concentrate on our districts. And then, of course, our reason for owner release. All 6 of those were aggressive. And for one reason or another, that's why they were owner released. And for that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, board members, are there any questions for Ms. Ward?
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Okay. Gino, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Gino Jimenez. I'm the Animal Control Supervisor for the City of Las Cruces. I'm going to present to you our numbers for June 2021. So our reported strays, we responded to 617 stray animal complaints. Of those, 303 were GOA, meaning the officer did not have contact with that animal. We were able to apprehend a total of 314. Of those, 282 were impounded at the Animal Service Center. We were successful in field RTOing 32 animals back to their owners. And of those 11, we had 11 unsuccessful attempts, meaning that those animals had some sort of identification. However, either the owner was not home, for some unknown reason, they weren't able to be returned to the owner in the field, so they were impounded at the Animal Service Center. So that gives us a total of 42 identifiable animals. My next slide is our 3-year comparison, our stray comparison. Last month was an exceptional month for us. Like you can see, the numbers were very, very high. I don't have a reason. I cannot give an explanation as to why that number was so high. Here is our 3-year field RTO comparison. We stuck with 32, which is our average throughout the years. Really, really close to our normal numbers. Here's a slide that I really, really had a hard time putting together. I don't like it, but it is what it is. And I know it's of concern to Clint as well. So this is the reason for owner releasing animals. So we had 10 dogs, 1 female, 1 male, 8 puppies. They were owner released because they were moving and could not take them with them. This was a litter and a mom and a dog, mama dog, papa dog. Excuse me. 7 adults, 7 dogs from 1 residence. They were 2 adult females, 1 adult male, with 4 puppies. The reason given was that they were being evicted and they could not take them with them. Next one is 7 dogs. The owner said that they could no longer take care of them, and the rescue that they were working with would not take them back. We had 6 dogs. This is a combination from different owners, aggressive towards people and or pets. 5 dogs, mama dog would not allow puppies to feed, and the owner could not afford another vet visit. That one, it's kind of heartbreaking. You know, this owner made at least the initial attempt to find out why the mom was not allowing the puppies to feed, but she couldn't afford a follow-up visit to the vet, so she decided to owner release them. We had 3 dogs that were owner released because they were being destructive, and 1 owner was given an eviction notice, meaning that the property manager, property owner, told her, you need to fix this, or get rid of your puppies, or you're evicted. So she chose to give up the animals. 3 dogs were owner released because they were sick. 2 dogs from the same owner were turned over because they killed their own chickens. 2 were turned in because they were old with health issues, and they also requested euthanasia for those 2 dogs. 1 dog was owner released because they kept escaping from the property. And finally, 1 was turned over because the owner had no time for it. Moving on to our next slide. Reasons we were unable to field RTO animals. 8 because there was no contact or by phone or at the residence. And you can see from my slide, 2 of those chips were registered out of town, one from Los Alamos and the second one from Deming. 2 for microchips were not registered, and finally 1, the microchip information was not current. And finally, my last slide gives you the map of the city for our strays for the month of June. Let me minimize this so I can bring up that slide. So with the help of IT and the GIS department, we were able to get this on this computer, where I know in the past we were having some difficulty because of permissions at this computer. We were able to work it out, and here is my slide for the month of June that shows all of our impounds. The area of focus that I wanted to really look at is, sorry, my mouse is going to make a lot of noise, is this area right here. This is 1751 West Hadley. And these are the number of cats that we impounded just this last month. You can see that they're probably being cared for in one isolated area. So that was a tremendous number of cats for 1 month. And there was another one. Sorry, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. I don't want to make anybody dizzy.
And while you're going through and trying to find where you're at, just for clarification, are each one of those dots, can that be multiple animals or just one animal?
Chair Sanchez, that can be multiple animals. So let's say, for example, the officer gets a call for 2 dogs or 2 cats in a trap. So that 1 dot will represent 2 impounds. So if you click on the dot, it will give you the actual information. So in this case, it was a black and orange cat that was impounded. So this was a single impound. But if you click on any of the dots, it will give you the exact reason why we were there. For instance, this is just a stray dog at that intersection. The description was just given as a brown dog, and of course, GOA.
And the reason I ask is I know that what you were just showing within where all the cats were identified, that could have been multiple, not just, even though that was just you had the bunch of dots, there could have been the opportunity that it actually represented more animals than just the 1 dot.
Absolutely, yes, sir. It could be 3 kittens. It could be 2 adult cats. Honestly, if I were to do every impound and every stray, there would be even more dots because there would be stacks on one property.
And I think that's why I was trying to get an understanding, not just because when we're looking at this, to line it up, I think with what you had is over 600 strays for this past month, but also, when you say a hotspot, it could be even more than what you actually see than the 1 dot or the however many dots you see there.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And just for clarification on that as well, because I know that this question has come up several times. When you look at a particular address, if you just pick out a dot, that does not necessarily mean that that dog lives there. It could have been a citizen passing by and saw a stray animal at that address, and when they called it into central dispatch, they pinpointed that address. So there was a little bit of concern, some privacy concerns there, and I was able to explain it to the citizens that doesn't necessarily mean they're complaining on you. It just happened to be that there was a stray animal in front of that address at that time.
And thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. And I know I had a couple more hot spots for cats, but for some reason they're not popping up right now. But this map is available on the city's webpage. It's called Stray Animal Map. So if you go to the search engine on www.los-cruces.org, you'll be able to find it there. The colors are a little bit different. I think for the public map, it shows it green, orange, and red rather than blue. And then, if there's a specific area that any of the councilors would like me to look at, I will zoom in on them if you'd like.
Councilor Flores?
It's not a particular area, but thank you so much for your presentation, Gino.
You're welcome.
And I'm really happy, well, not happy, but it's good to know that you take the information regarding the reasons as to why the pets are brought into the center or call you insofar as evictions are concerned, and that's going to happen more and more because we don't have any laws in the state of New Mexico. We just have a New Mexico Supreme Court case which allows people to appeal an eviction, but of course there aren't enough attorneys in the state to take care of that. So with that, and then we found out yesterday that the magistrate courts here locally are not respecting eviction, the law that came down. They're just letting the eviction stand, which means that our pets are going to be affected even more here in our county. So that's something that we just learned yesterday. Joanna, Councilor Bencomo, and I are on that housing committee, and it was incidental to housing. But then I think evictions, and then you're bringing up the fact that the doggies and the cats and all pets have to go too. So it's very important when we do our education to alert, to add that part, that it's very important to get a lease that allows pets in the home of the residents that they are renting. So, because I know that we've been talking about that education, educating the community. So if we could add that to our, just an awareness thing for pet owners. Thank you, Gina.
Absolutely. Chair Sanchez, Councilor Flores, and I agree with you 100%. I think this information is important as well to Clint, so that once these animals come into his facility, he has a little bit of a history as to why they were brought in to begin with, and he can either have that staff work with them, because the majority of them, of these owner releases, with the exception of the ones that were destructive or killing the chickens, may have an opportunity to be placed in a different home, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that information, I believe, is helpful for him.
Yes. Thank you, Gino. Thank you,
welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Are there any other questions for Gino? Okay.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
Okay, we're on to agenda item 4B, which is shelter statistics and activities by Mr. Thacker.
Good morning. How are you all this morning?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing excellent. Quinn Thacker with the Animal Services Center in the Mesilla Valley, Executive Director. Talk to you today about our numbers from June 2021. Currently in the facility, we have 570 animals. That is higher than it was in 2020, of course, with the pandemic numbers. And then 2019 we threw in there just so you could see the pre-pandemic numbers. So a good spread of numbers there. So we're not as high as we could be, and we're not going to get that high. Again, this has been conversations we've had about the quality of care that animals receive, and we want to keep it lower. 570 is actually, we're finding too high, especially with the staff that we have now. So we are working to get that animal lower, which we can talk about in a little bit. So our intakes, again, far lower than 2019, but in 2021 we had 785. Break that down in 2021 of 420 dogs, 360 cats, and 5 others. This slide is showing what rescues are taking from us, what rescues and how much and what type. We appreciate every single rescue here in Las Cruces and also regionally, every single rescue out there. We would not be able to save lives without them. I I want to give a special shout out to Action Programs for Animals, APA, always worked really well with us to get animals out. Broken Promises is a high one. Colorado Puppy Rescue, they continue to help us with our puppies. Thank goodness to our medical department who keeps these puppies healthy. Thank goodness to our fosters who actually take these animals, these puppies into their homes so they don't have to stay in the shelter with a higher chance of getting sick. So we are so appreciative of them. Unfortunately, we have a lot of puppies that can go and that will continue to go. And that's something that we're going to be working on in years to come as well. Some other ones, especially the Safe Haven Humane Society, that's an Oregon Safe Haven, not the one that's here locally. They were part of our flight that we had with Dog as my co-pilot, so we're grateful for them. And New Hope Rescue, they're up there with 17 dogs and 9 cats. We appreciate them. They're located in Colorado, and I've actually driven there with myself with a bunch of animals to deliver to them, so we're grateful for their partnership as well. A lot of rescues in July. You're going to see a little bit lower numbers when we present next month because everybody is kind of freezing intake. They're doing their best, but again, they have highs and lows as well. So rescues are starting, or they are full. So we're struggling in July to find places for these animals. In June, we had 5 animals returned, 0 cats, 5 dogs. As you can see, 4 behavior problems, 1 lifestyle change. And the behavior problems, we always ask, we always present, would you like a free visit with a dog trainer? Sometimes they say yes, and we can avoid that surrender. Oftentimes, like in these 4 cases, they say no. I think that sometimes people just don't want to do what it takes to overcome that issue, like a puppy chewing or a dog chasing cats kind of a thing. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of responsibility to have an animal. And some people just aren't up for it, and I can respect them for that. Here are outcomes, 2020 versus 2021. 13% of our animals were actually adopted in June of 2021. The big number we like to see there is rescued, 31%. Our reclaims were down 9% from 13 in 2020. And euthanasia, of course, was increased to that 20%. We did a lot more euthanasias, trying to keep our care. Now, the way we do euthanasias, we don't walk through and just say you, and you. We have a system of first doing the very ill, and then we do the ones that are not responding to treatment after the first time, and then it goes to the aggression. So we're doing these animals that were going to be most likely done anyways. So we're not euthanizing perfectly healthy animals that are perfectly adoptable. These are animals that have issues. Now, it may be that they have treatable issues, like, for instance, an animal that's not responding to medical treatment. If that animal might be in a foster home, then it might recover from that. But at this point, we just don't have those capabilities, so euthanasia is the best alternative for that animal and for us in that situation, unfortunately. We ended the year with the month of June with a 75% live release rate. That means 75% of the animals that came in the center left alive. So people often ask, well, why do you euthanize them? And these are our main reasons. Red is dog, yellow is cat. So behavior feral is all cats, over 30 animals were there. Medical is a mixture of dog and cats. Behavior aggressive, dog, of course, is only dog. But you can see how this is how we do our euthanasia selections. Medical ringworm, medical respiratory signs, medical failure to thrive. Those are usually small kittens that have that, and it continues to decrease from there. We actually topped our highest visitor amount. That's contributing to, 1, summertime, so we're very busy, and 2, vaccines getting done, pandemic is coming downswing, so we're seeing more people coming to the center. 842 for the record on that, so we're excited to see more people coming out. I was really excited to see this one too. I think this is the highest percentage we've had. June adoption appointments. So we are no longer offering individuals just the free reign of coming into our kennels and walking through. It's for a variety of reasons. First and foremost is the health of the animals. When people walk through, I don't know about you, but I have to have the dog lick my fingers and to pet them and say, to say, I love you, you're so cute, why are you in here? The problem is, you do that with every single dog. So that passes on that sickness that one may have somewhere in there, passes it on. Also, another big one is I've walked into a kennel where it's completely quiet. And as soon as that dog associates that door opening with something's going to happen, whether it's a walk, whether it's treats, whether it's food time, and so they just go nuts. The stress level goes high. And there's this thing called environmental empathy, where somebody else is barking, I have to bark. I don't know why I'm barking, but I'm barking, and this is fun, this is exciting. And so the stress level goes up for all the animals, and it's harder on a high-stressed animal to respond with that or with the treatments than it is a not fear, anxiety, stress animal. So those are reasons why, just some of them, of why we're keeping appointments. The appointments kept, 81% of our appointments were kept in June, and then 56% of those ended in finalized adoptions. And I think I believe that's our highest percentage yet, and we're happy for that. Now this is interesting. We had a lot of adoptions, but our page views were down almost the lowest that they've ever been for the whole year to date, for August 2020 to June 2021. And I'm contributing this to a more quality search. Individuals, we may have more adoptions, but that's because they vetted the animals that they wanted and they committed to those. And so it's not a repeated search for the ones they see. Now, our Facebook views were the highest we've ever had, and that's great. We had a lot of stuff going on Facebook. We have our Freedom to Choose this month. We're constantly hitting that out. Well, that's in July. This is June numbers. So in June, we had a Father's Day event, and we continue to have events each month that push people to Facebook and hopefully push them to our website. That's our presentation. Our pets of the week are Robin and Karina. Karina's a repeat. We're really trying to get her adopted. She's a sweetheart of a pooch, which we love very much. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Clint Thacker, for your thorough presentation, and thank you for your services as well. Insofar as the slide 7. Can we just focus on that? Or please, thank you. So I noticed that
We'll get there. There it is.
there it was. Thank you, Clint. So I noticed that wildlife is in the euthanasia reports. Isn't wildlife in the jurisdiction of the USDA?
Yes, it is. And right now, I bet our medical director, Dr. Haddon, is just cheering for you right now. So we're trying really hard and talking with animal control officers. I've yet to talk with Gino and Gino and Mary Lou about this, but we no longer want to accept wildlife. Again, this is from speaking with wildlife officials that we need to be the absolute, very much last resort for that. Wildlife provides those services of euthanasia. Just about, I think it was Monday, we had a fox that came into us from an animal control officer, and it was injured. And we asked the animal control officer, it was a city call, and we said, did you call wildlife? And she said, no. And he says, well, you need to call wildlife. And she said, well, it's injured. And we said, have you called wildlife to see what their response is, like their response time? And she says, no, I'll do it right now. So she's able to call wildlife, and it was within 10 minutes they were there. So we really need that to be done first rather than the animal being brought to the center, especially if wildlife can meet you somewhere, and do it even quicker. So.
Thank you for that information. And I was wondering, Clint, if it would be possible for you to have I don't know if you have a regular column in the Sun News or in the Bulletin where you can be sharing all this information so that the public is aware. I don't see anything regularly. There used to be a very regular submission of articles, but we don't have that, and I don't know why. But just to cover the various issues that we cover here that you deal with every day in terms of keeping our community enlightened or educated. Thank you.
Council, I think that's a great idea, and we're already on it. We have our grant writer, who I failed to introduce at the very beginning. I'll do that when all questions are done, but she has already come up with topics for every month to be able to discuss, and she's having talks with the Sun News, right, Elaine? Sun News to have that completed. And she's actually going to do it instead of me. And so it's going to be a lot better. Yeah, it'll be a lot better having a professional do it. So we're excited for those, but that is exactly what we are going to be doing, is passing along information.
Great.
So
thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Are there any other questions for Clint? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Clint. I just wanted to comment about the appointments. This was one area that at first I was a little concerned with, because sometimes the spur of the moment, having people go over there, it might increase your chances. But after looking at everything, I really do think this is a great way to proceed, not only for the health of the shelter, but also because I think it gives people a little bit more pause to make sure that they really are considering all the elements for the animal. And as we're seeing, a lot of individuals got animals during the pandemic, and now there's a few people that want to go out and live a different type of lifestyle, and unfortunately they're not considering those animals back with them. And so having this appointment system, I think, gives people just that step to pause and make sure that it's really what they want for their long-term companion. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you, and I absolutely agree. It gives, Huskies with Games of Thrones went absolutely crazy wild. We couldn't keep them in for the first couple of years, and so it gives somebody a chance when they see a Husky to maybe Google Husky and see that maybe it's not the best place in southern New Mexico to have a dog that likes cold and is very, very, very active. So a simple Google, a little bit of research might persuade somebody to get something else. So I completely agree. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Thacker? All right.
I would like to take a moment now, Mr. Chair, if I may, and introduce our grant writer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Elaine, will you join me? So Elaine is coming from us from actually here locally in Las Cruces. She is a member of multiple animal rescues, works really well with, is it Kitty Glitter?
Kitty Glitter.
Kitty Glitter, she's a big important part of. So I'm going to let her talk about herself and some experience she has. And also, if you could mention some of the things you've already done and are working on for the center.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me first say that I've been at...
And I'm sorry, Ms. Simon, would you say your name for the record?
I'm so sorry. Elaine Stakera Simon.
Thank you.
So, thank you. I've been with the center since July 6th, and it has been eye-opening and exciting and just sort of a pleasure to get to know people and watch the hard work that everybody is putting in. I have been in Las Cruces since 2005. I've been involved with a number of different animal welfare efforts. I don't know that I've ever belonged to one organization. I started off when there was Animal Control Reserve. That's how Mary Lou and I met way back in the day, going back quite a while. Right now I'm involved with Kitty Glitter, which is an annual jewelry sale which benefits the cat rescues in town. And we couldn't last year, obviously, because of the pandemic, but we're on for October, so save the dates. I think it's October 8th and 9th, so save the dates. I had a I was with the New Mexico State University Foundation for about 10 years, did a lot of grant writing. I worked with a lot of institutional donors, corporate sponsorships, a lot of individual donors as well. So my background is fundraising. I've been a professional writer for 25 plus years. And thank you for mentioning having information getting out into the community through the newspapers. I am scheduled to be meeting with the Sun News next week to talk about that very thing. And as Clint mentioned, there's a whole long list of topics, but we're going to start where we're going to start at the beginning. I've reached out to some of our corporate community residents to talk about helping out with things like helping people who can't afford spay-neuters when their animals are returned to them when they're coming to reclaim. We have a lot of, August is going to be a big month for grant submissions, so I have my work cut out for me, so you won't see me around very much because my nose will be to the grindstone. Have I taken up too much time? I think that's it. All right, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here this morning.
What Lane failed to mention is that she has already had a parakeet in her office and a couple kittens, and currently has a little puppy in her office right now. So she's fitting in perfectly to the family there at the ASCMV. We are so grateful to have her there. She's going to make such a big difference in getting funds for specific projects that we have. One thing that I forgot to mention is we did a big announcement yesterday on Facebook about our drive-through clinic. That's going to be vaccines and microchips. We're ecstatic for this. It's at a new location called Field of Dreams. We're going to be utilizing both parking lots, so entire Field of Dreams location. There's a road that loops around the top of it. So it's going to be a big production. We're excited for that. Thankful for the grant that we received for purchasing the vaccines for that, and microchips, so we're excited for that. That's going to be August 22nd from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., and we are going to be closing the center on that day. We'll have minimum staff there to do what we call holiday cleaning. It's just to feed and clean, and then everybody's going to be reporting to the Field of Dreams location because we'll need all hands on deck for that. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Owens.
Clint, Michelle from APA sent out a rather lengthy statement concerning the fact that we are referring people who bring in a found animal to the rescues, and then the rescues turn them down because they're overloaded. And she sees this as a misleading practice on behalf of the center. Have you responded to her, or do you have any response in mind?
We do. I actually have a presentation and a topic discussion on that topic later in the board meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One other question, Mr. Chairman. Have you done anything about trying to bring on board different rescues at each meeting to fill the void that we currently have with the resignation?
And Commissioner Allens, that was going to be also part of that rescue engagement, so I appreciate you bringing that up because those are actually part of the topics on discussion item 5B for rescue engagement.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Clint. Okay, we're on to now agenda item 4C, committee reports. We'll start with the Finance Committee. Ms. Enriquez.
Yes, good morning, Chair Sanchez and board members. On June 15th, the Finance Committee met. It was city staff only. At that point, Josh Saffill informed us there was no significant issues or concerns, and so with that, today he'll give the finance presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Josh Saffill, and on behalf of the Finance Department of the City of Las Cruces, I would like to present the unaudited financial statements as of June 30th, 2021. I would like to state that these numbers are preliminary. We're still working on closing the month of June, so these numbers were good as of probably July 9th, which was our first close. So starting off, if we look at our statement of net positions, looking at the general fund, we had cash of $1,004,111 and receivables of $89,401, giving us total assets in the general fund of $1,093,512. We had liabilities of $84,714 and revenues collected in advance of $179,869, leaving us an unassigned fund balance of $828,929. I wanted to highlight the revenue collected in advance. I was actually excited this month because I thought we would see a nice drop in that because we were finally able to expend some grant funds, and so therefore we could recognize that revenue. And then we went and got $150,000 to add to it. So you don't really see that drop, but it did change. In our capital projects fund, we had cash of $29,798 and a restricted, fund balance of $29,798. Then looking at our capital assets, we had capital assets net of accumulated depreciation in the amount of $181,759, or with an unassigned fund balance of $181,759. Looking at our change in net position, total revenues for the period were $3,267,336. Total expenditures were $2,610,155. So overall for the year, we had a positive net change to fund balance of $657,181. In our capital projects fund, we did have expenditure throughout the year of $1,767. And in our capital assets fund, we recognized depreciation on assets of $42,230.
And Mr. Saffel, you can hold a second. Commissioner Allens, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you go back to the previous slide, please? I still don't understand why revenue collected in advance is a liability as opposed to money in the general fund.
Yes, and the reason for that is that when we collect the revenue in advance, basically it's for a grant. And so usually with grants, there's stipulations on how that money is to be spent. So when they give us the money in advance, we have to expend it for specific purposes. So if we don't actually spend it for those purposes, then the grantor can ask for that money back. So until we've actually spent it on what it's required to be spent on, it's considered a liability because we may have to return those funds.
Thank you, Commissioner Allens.
Okay. So returning to budget to actual, change in net position, our total revenue of $3,267,000 was 94% of budget, and our total expenditures of $2,610,000 was 73.4% of budget. Our budget parameter, this being the end of the fiscal year, was 100%. Revenue was close, 94% is not bad. Our expenditures at 73.4% were fairly low, but that's good. You don't want to expend too greatly, so that is good to see. Looking at revenues and expenditures throughout the year per month, we can see that we had, of course, the way that we receive the money, we receive 20% of the contribution from city and county at the beginning, so that's why we see that huge amount received at the very beginning of July. But then we see that the revenues tend to kind of settle down, and we basically have a straight line for the rest of the year as the revenues come in and sort of straighten out. We see the expenditures, for the most part, generally tended to be under the revenue we were collecting, which is good, and that explains why we had that $600,000 increase to fund balance. Finally, looking at the percentage of total expenditures, again, our total expenditures were $2,610,155. Of that, 73% were personnel expenses, 15% were services, 6% were supplies, 2% insurance, and 2% repairs and maintenance, and then finally 1% was capital and 1% was other expenses.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens?
What are services? What does that consist of?
Services, of course, would be any kind of service that is provided to the Animal Services Center. One of the probably largest things that you'll see in services is the advertising. The money that's spent on the advertising campaigns and things like that would be considered in the services section. Other things would be like utilities, things that, telephones, other things that help the center to operate, but that are not tangible goods. So again, one of the biggest ones would be that advertising expense and making use of any other service that was provided. And that will conclude my presentation. I stand for any other questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Saffel?
Yes, Chair.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sappel. Do we expect a lot of carryovers or changes for the fiscal year so far?
I don't believe so, but we will have, once everything gets done and we have audited, we will present the audited financial statements, probably, hopefully in March of next year, if not before then. I'm not expecting huge changes, no, from what we've seen already.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Batistui. Is there any other questions for Mr. Saffel? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to the Executive Committee report, which myself, Vice Chair Batistui, and Mr. Thacker met 2 times this month. We met on Wednesday, the 14th of July, and then we also met on Tuesday, the 20th of July. And mainly along with the discussion for the agenda, we did discuss on, I think one of the highlights that we just one of the things was mentioning was how Ms. Simon joined the ASCMV, but there were also 4 other new employees that started over the last month with the ASCMV. There were some updates with the new facility, which may be coming here with the facilities committee. But the big discussion item, which we'll also discuss here as a whole, the board, was going to be around rescue engagement, given some of the input we've been having from our partners in the community, and then also, as Commissioner Ellens had mentioned, the gap that we have with not having the Coalition for Pets and People on our agenda this month. So, but that was it. It was just a lot of discussion around that, and I think I did want to make a note to Mr. Thacker. Appreciated, and I've seen more of the presence that you've had on Facebook and doing the Facebook Lives, and for the public to see not just updates for the new facility coming on, but also just what's going on, because I think one of the things that I get, especially, and it probably the rest of the public, when you go live, we get that nice notification that the ASCMV is live right now, and we can click it and we go see what's going on. And so we've been appreciative of that and having that additional visibility, so that way the public sees everything that's going on with you, with the organization, and the facility as a whole. So did want to say that. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Thacker. But that's all I have on the Executive Committee meeting. All right. And I will move on to the Facility Committee, which Mayor Pro Tem Gandara is not here, but Clint, will you be giving a quick update?
I can give a quick update on that, yes. We did meet, had a good discussion concerning the ASCMV as a whole. I know that we discussed the new center being built. They're moving a significant amount of dirt. If you have seen the corner on Rinconada and Bataan Memorial West, you will know that there's some big changes, something's going on. That large hill that was there on the corner is almost gone, and they are compacting the dirt as we speak. We're excited to see that move forward. Completion date is again around the 3rd, 4th quarter of 2022 for the building. At the existing center, we're having some issues with some windows that we had replaced that are leaking. It's not the actual window, it's actually the window frame that needs to be replaced. And the problem is the area they're located in is the surgery suite. So we can't just go in at any time, and these metal frame, windows frames are filled with cement. So we just can't, it's not a simple swap in and out. There has to be some considerable demo work, so that's got to be planned ahead. In the temporary, we have, or we're going to have the company come and do some basic caulking, so that can be secured and no longer get wet through. And as far as positions are filled, we have 7 positions, 5 full-time, 2 part-time that are going to be joining us. Could be as early as next week. One of those is our volunteer coordinator, which we're very excited about, to have them come on board. And others are front office personnel and the animal caregiver personnel. We have started recruitment on more animal caregiver personnel, and Bernice has started the process for our animal care specialist. Now, if you remember, we talked about this position in the budget time, where we're taking 2 animal caregiver positions and turning them into an animal care specialist, where their main or a primary duty is going to be an animal caregiver, but when a transport comes up, that they have the training and the ability and the desire to drive these transports. So that's going to be advantageous for our rescue coordinators, which a rescue coordinator started on the 18th, so we're excited for that as well. So we're back to full staff on there. So this is a quick update for the facilities.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Thacker. Are there any questions for Mr. Thacker before you? Okay. We'll go Councilor Flores, and then we'll go Vice Chair Betestubi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, Mr. Thacker. So, Clint, I know that we've discussed ARPA money that has come in and the projects that have been impacted because of COVID. And, for example, our new center that's going up had to be redesigned. Something had to be taken away because the, certain aspects of the design had to be revisited, redesigned. With ARPA money, we've had discussions about going back to the drawing board, perhaps going back with the businesses we've contracted with. The price of wood went up incredibly high because of COVID. It had that impact, so that's why the center was, the new center had to be redesigned to accommodate the impact on the price and what could be done insofar as the GO bond money. So have you had any discussions with city personnel about that?
Yeah, there's an email chain going back and forth. Councilor Stubbe advised me to contact them and let them know the things that I wanted back into the center. So I expressed in detailed order of what I would like most important to be put back together. So there's an email chain going back and forth on that.
Good. Yeah, I did bring up, but I couldn't remember the names. I think there's a port that was going to be...
Sally Port.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact names or anything, but I do remember that there was supposed to be like 2 access areas. Anyway, at any rate, I'm glad that you're involved with that. And thank you, Vice Chair Betestubi, for doing that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Clint. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Vice Chair Betestubi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Clint. I was going to ask how you all fared after the storm that we had just a week and a half ago, and how that all looks.
We did suffer some casualties beyond the blowing around of kennels and the plastic transportation kennels. They got blown around pretty good. The temporary awning that covers our impound area got thrashed to shreds. It looked like, even though it's tied down, it looks like it got lifted up and somebody in the wind dismantled it, and we had a pole hit the transfer van window, the windshield. So it had a good crack in it. It's pretty amazing to watch how that all took place in the wind. And then our gate, it looked like where it stops, it's kind of hard to explain, but where it stops on the coming forward or the coming across, it acted as a hinge and it blew in and bent the gate. So it took 2 days to get that fixed, but the company we work with was on it. It took 2 days because they had to take it to the shop, the gate, and they had to cut out the bent piece and then weld it back on. So it took a day to do that and then another day to install it back. But special thanks to the ACOs. I kept Mary Lou and Gino in the loop on that, so they were aware that the area wasn't secure, because we like to have a secure area in case animals get out and run around during impounds from either them or us. So that was notified there, so we had good communication, but that was primarily it. We nothing incredibly major like roof leaks or anything like that.
Okay, great. And for those other items, everything's been fixed and assessed?
Yeah, gate is completed. The van has not yet been fixed. However, it's been reported, and we're just waiting for an appointment to take it in to get replaced.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilor Flores? Your microphone.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you again, Vice Chair Abeyta-Stubbe, for asking about the condition. Was that all covered? Will all of the damage be covered by insurance, or is that going to impact our budget?
I don't think we filed, or it has impacted the budget, but we did not file any towards our insurance, no.
Why not? You don't have coverage, or?
I believe that, well, the only thing that would have been.
Come on up. We'll have Bernice talk to it, because she's the one that's handled the insurance for it.
Oh.
Bernice Navarro. Yes, right now we were in transition with the different insurances. The last insurance company, they no longer handle shelters, so we're moving into a new one. Our deductible on that insurance is $1,000. So like the damage to the window, that's only going to be like $400 or $500. So things like that. The only one that I hadn't considered and thought about was for the gate, but we can look into that one and just to see, if that one is. But the other ones, the other damages to the awnings and things like that, they're well below the costs that, in order not to meet the deductible. So.
I see. Well, that's good to know, because I was thinking they might be considered acts of God, and some acts of God are not covered, and it's like, well, why have the insurance?
Right.
So,
right.
well, thank you
Yeah,
very
but-
much, Bernice, Ms. Navarro, and thank you, Mr. Thacker. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Okay. Any other questions? None? Thank you, Clint.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're on to the discussion items on the agenda. We'll discussion item 5A, which is our audit entrance conference with Patillo, Brown, and Hill. Mr. Seffel.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Once again, I'm Josh Saffel, and hopefully I'll be able to introduce to you Chris Garner, our external auditor. I know that he was going to come on digitally or through another way, so hopefully he is on. Are you here, Chris? Well, it would appear that Chris Garner is not available to join us today. I apologize for that, take full responsibility for that not being prepared. Going from Zoom meetings to live meetings did kind of set us back on that. So I will make sure that we are able to present as soon as possible, but it may not be today. So I apologize for that.
Why don't we, if it's a case and maybe there's a chance that we can get him connected, why don't we move on to agenda item 5B, the rescue engagement, and then we can come back in the case we get him on. That way we can get the audit entrance review or the entrance in conference done and over with, if that's okay, or if there's no objections from the board. Okay. All right. All right, so we'll on to 5B, and then we'll come back to 5A, this one was a rescue engagement, and this was what Commissioner Ellens, you alluded to. The two items that we were looking to discuss was around the presentations and how we feel that the agenda item from the Coalition for Pets and People, and still have some engagement with our community members, the rescue community. And then the second piece of it was around the emails we received. I know I've received 3 emails. One was from Michelle, one was from Miss Kathy Stark, and then one from Mr. Emile Bourdet, discussing the process that the ASCMV does with owner surrenders and that piece of it. So I know we've talked about it, Mr. Thacker already has this up, so we'll let you present and then we can continue on with further discussion.
Thank you, sir. So it was requested me that we talk a little bit about why the ASCMV is doing what policies we are currently doing. And what that means is why are we telling individuals who owners surrender an animal to first try to find a home for it? And we give them, and I'll show you a little later in the presentation, that we give them resources to do. And then also, why are we telling individuals who find an animal and come to the center, why are we telling them or urging them to please hold on to that animal, try to find the owner themselves? So at first I wanted to let you show you, in 2000, or in all years, I only did the last 3, this kind of cycle roller coaster that happens with intakes. Starting in May and ending around August, September, we go up really high and then we come back down. And it's important to note that because over the years, as you can see, it goes April, May's low, and it goes up, and then comes back down. And the next year in 2021, you can see that it started low and it's going back up. So it's following the same pattern. And what this means is we are continuing to have a lot of impounds. We are at the height of our impound season. And this isn't just for the ASCMV, this is every place I've worked. Summertime, more people are out, the more animals are out. In the summertime, animals are being born. Summertime, people are active and they see these animals that are coming. In the summertime, there's more ACOs, hopefully, that are out working and seeing it. So everything is heightened in the summertime. So I want you to know these 2 policies that I mentioned, they're not new. Centers have been doing this since the early 2017s, and it's just been pushed and pushed. A lot of the changes were forced upon animal centers in the pandemic to make these types of changes that I just mentioned. And then a lot of places, Best Friends Animal Society, Maddie's Fund, ASPCA, American Pets Alive, all these big names in the industry are telling you there's some programs that happened during COVID that should continue. And these are some of them that we are currently doing. Appointment-based owner surrenders. That's a management intake method, where if you want to surrender your animal, that's fine. First, we would like you to have some alternatives, and we give them a paper that lists those options. And yes, rescues are listed on there as resources. But I'm going to show you the handout, and you'll see at the bottom it says ASCMV will take your animal. Another one is for, and this happened during the pandemic, is suspend low priority non-emergency activities or calls for animal control officers to do. And we've talked about that, and we've talked with ACOs and also with this board concerning that as well. So this is page 2 of the handout. Again, you'll see endorsements down below. This is the website where I got it from, is from bestfriends.org. Appointment systems for adoptions. That continues to be a big plus that they want us to do under client services. Divert in-person to online portals. What that means is instead of having people walk through the center looking for adoptions, go to the website and look for the animal you want to adopt and make an appointment. And then appointment system for intakes, meaning if you find an animal or if you want to adopt, let's make an appointment and let's talk about it and talk it through, because there may be some individuals that are willing to take that animal and take that upon themselves to try to find the owner for it. And that's, I mean, we're at the point right now where 1 or 2 people makes a big difference for us. And I know there's members on this board who have had that opportunity and have been called the center and have been told, we are high intake right now, please keep this animal, or are you able to keep it? Let's try to find the owner, and we're given a handout for that. So this is the handout that we've given to individuals who are asking or want to come to us and say, I can no longer own my pet, I want you guys to take it. So we give them listings: Humane Society of Southern New Mexico, Doña County Humane Society, Action Program for Animals, Broken Promises Rescues, Crusoe's Cool Cats. We give them Facebook pages they can go to and list their animals available for adoption. We give them other websites they can go to list their animals for adoptions. Rehome Your Pets is a big one that people should be checking out, whether to adopt or also to rehome. But there's always the one on the bottom that says, always use the ASCMV as your last option. So if rescues are getting these calls, all they have to say is no, we don't have room right now. When the individual has used all the resources, exhausted them all, then call us, make an appointment, and we will take the animal. If at any time the owner ever says, I'm just going to take and drop it off in the desert, or I'm just going to let it go, we will take the animal. If at any time the animal is injured or sick, then we will take the animal. Now, if you find an animal, same thing. We ask if they're willing to hold on to the animal. All the studies are showing that these animals, or especially dogs, are being found fairly close to the areas of where they live. Dallas Animal Services just did a big study for the whole area of Dallas, and it was within a quarter mile of where the animal or where the dog was impounded is where the animal lives. So we're talking go 2 houses down on each side, across the street and behind. Does it take extra 5-10 minutes? Yes, it does. Does it keep an animal if you find somebody willing to hold on to the animal, or the actual owner, or somebody who knows and gives you another follow-up? Oh yeah, I've seen that dog here. I think it got left here. You have more information right there, and you can put that into the note. So it's useful either way for that to happen. For the individuals who find an animal, they too can go for a walk and ask people, because there's people who walk every single morning or every single night, and they can probably tell you every single dog that they hear bark and where it lives and how long it barks for, and you can talk to those individuals. We'll scan for a microchip. We give them this option. And again, if they say, no, I can't hold on to it, or they say, we've tried, we can't find the owner, then we will take the animal for sure. And that's my presentation for that, just to give you an idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Again, this is not something that we're pulling out from underneath our hats. This is something that is published and supported by major groups in the industry. Any questions for me?
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Clint, for this. I know that we've been talking a lot about this kind of new policy and new ways, I think, especially coming out of COVID, that we can adapt for hopefully better for different ways. I myself have used this system, and I like to do it anonymously just to see how it plays out. But we had that opportunity, actually, as we found a dog while trying to do litter cleanup. And so we called, we asked what can we do. We walked it around the neighborhood. We did end up going to a vet, APA, to get it scanned. And we decided, we were advised, if we can keep it, to keep it. And so we tried that process. However, it did a 180 after it saw our other animals at the house. And so we called the Animal Service Center. We said, this dog has become quite aggressive. And we were advised to bring it in right away. And so that I do appreciate, because there are safety issues and concerns sometimes when you're trying to do the right thing and it's just not going to work out. One of the items that you have here is that resource list. I am curious, did we ask any of these agencies if they wanted to be included on this list, since they are kind of private partners? And perhaps that is one way, that we can work together to foster good relationships. And if they don't want to be included on something like this, then we might be able to remove that.
So, two-part answer on that. To the best of my knowledge, no, we did not ask if individuals would like to be on this list. However, these are options that are on other publications that we have there at the center, so I felt it was fine to list them. And then the second part is we are working on another edition of this, where we're calling the area or the rescue and asking what they can offer. So instead of just saying stray animal, Humane Society of Southern New Mexico, we could put on there, we'll scan for microchip. We'll do this and we'll do this. And so it gives it more specific than just contact them.
Thank you. I think that's great to, to reach out to each one, put what they're willing to participate with as we give out this information to the public. And if they're not, then we can respect those wishes with that. Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Clint.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Allens?
Clint, have you responded to these emails that we got that I raised earlier, like from APA and Kathy Stark?
I have not responded to the specific email, but I've already talked to those individuals before the emails were sent. I didn't feel like I should respond to them because it was sent to everybody. It was a long list of recipients for that, so I didn't know if I would be the one to respond or if it would be a board member. But again, I've spoken to them before the email.
And what was their reaction?
They didn't agree. It's the same as the email stated.
So do we have an intractable problem on our hands with them?
As far as relation-wise?
Yes.
I don't think so. APA has always been very professional in all that they do. They know that they're in it for the animals. They're not in it for friends in no way. And I appreciate that with them and about them, especially working with Michelle. She's not afraid to tell me what she thinks is right and what she thinks is wrong. I mean, we had a but a messenger discussion just last night about vaccines. And she agreed with where we were coming from, whereas before, she was unsure. So I don't think our relationships is hurting at all.
Okay. What about Kathy Stark?
With Kathy, she's a great member of the society that works hard for the animals, and I know she is part of several of the rescue programs that are here in the area. I had lunch at her house with some friends last week. I don't think that friendship or that dialogue is injured whatsoever with that.
Okay, thank you.
Ex officio member Ward?
Thank you, Chair. This isn't a question, this is just a comment in regards to the owner release of animals. Doñana County Animal Control has not been taking, just recently we have stopped picking up owner release animals at this time, unless of course it's due to exigent circumstances. That is partly, and it's a two-part reason, partly because of the email that came from the shelter as a request for help on lowering the number of intakes. So that was one of the reasons we thought we could help lower those numbers. Of course, we were seeing our 911 screen blow up with calls, and a lot of it was owner releasing of just animals like crazy for no reason. And you saw our reasons in the past. And then part of it is because we're very short-handed right now. We are down to 5 animal control officers, and that's part of the reason is trying to figure out what services we can provide to the constituents. And owner releasing unless there's exigent circumstances, of course, is one that we're going to halt at this time. So that was sent over to the 911 dispatcher. And since then, we really haven't seen a high number of those come in, so hopefully our numbers will decrease by that. And we'll also look at our strays to see what happens in that time frame.
Great, thank you, Ms. Ward, appreciate that update. Clint, and I know I did respond to Michelle's email and understanding, because I think there is, the way I try to refer to is the community members, because I think it is a community, right? The animal community here, and the ASCMV plays a central role in, within that community. One of the things that she clarified for me was, I think for at least in her email, is around the strays piece of it. 'Cause I think there's been a couple of emails, or at least some discussion that from community members that there's stories or there's examples where someone felt that they could not bring them to the ASCMV and then chose to just release them out wherever in the along in the desert or along a busy road. So I guess my question, and I'll before I get to the question piece of it, I did want to add, I had seen, and this was not so much on a stray, but an owner surrender, where I had seen where a owner was looking, because they were moving due to, I don't know if it was a deployment or what specifically, but they weren't able to care for their 2 dogs. They were trying to go through the list, or at least they had a couple of names. I don't know whether, if somebody calls to the ASCMV, do they get the talk that shows this, or do they have to actually show up in person to even see this page where they say the ASCMV will take those animals?
All phone calls and walk-ins are handled the same. If they have an email address, this is also available electronically, and we send it to them.
Okay, because I know it just happened that I was at one of the rescues, they showed up, said, this is where I was told to go. They weren't, it happened to be APA. They were full, and, I think they were advised, try again, if not, call back, a little bit later, maybe if they'd had some adoptions, that they would have room to take the animals. But I didn't ask, and I think maybe I should have, if they knew that the ASCMV was their last option. They seemed to be under the understanding that the ASCMV would not take the animal. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just, the initial thought, or at least because they were asked to go somewhere else and find a home, that they didn't get that message. So I don't know if that might be something missing. But I think, as Vice Chair Bathistuvi said, or recommended, maybe there's an opportunity to work, or at least identify which of the community members or organizations will be willing or to participate, or at least the options or the services they provide.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just for 2 things. One is we're talking about 2 separate things, stray animal and an owner surrender. On a stray animal, when they get this form that's on the screen now, nowhere on that does it say to go to a rescue for a stray animal. Yep. That's not their job. The rescue's job is to hold on to a stray animal and try to find it. Now, whether the individuals, where they get that information, I don't know, but it's not from us. We're not telling them to go to a rescue on a stray animal. We're asking the individual to hold on to it and try to find the owner. Now, on the options for owner surrender, that yes, we are asking to reach out to other areas, but in no means are we saying ever that they will take them. We're saying this is your responsibility. Don't just push it over on us. Why don't you work and try to find a place for that animal?
Okay. Thank you for clarifying between the 2 processes. Yes. And I know I mixed up the 2. Now, is there a requirement on a stray, the previous slide, is there a requirement at all that they have to keep them for so many hours?
No, there's not. There is, that's why it's on there, to fill out the lost animal report. So we do that at the center if the person is willing. If they don't, if they say, okay, I'll keep the animal, and they leave, then we tell them, with this paper, you need to fill out a lost animal report. And what that serves is that's the same thing as being impounded at the center. And our policy says 3 days for animals that don't have any ID or sign of ownership, and 5 days for ones that do. And it's just more time for the owners to come and get them. So that found report serves as that wait time.
Okay.
Because we've had individuals that go out that have rehomed an animal, and we give them this form. They sit in the parking lot and they call, and they're told no on all of them, and they come back in and say, I called, nobody can take it, and we'll take the animal. If that's the best that they can do, then that's the best that they can do.
Okay. And the reason I asked is because I think I've heard at least that feedback was that the ASCMV was making a requirement that people had to hold an animal for 72 hours before, on a stray, before you would take them.
No, we have a piece of paper for adoptions that says you need to have an animal for at least 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. I don't know if they're getting that confused with it, but as far as my knowledge, we have not been telling people to keep it for at least 3 days.
Okay. And one last question, or at least because of the numbers, I know during your previous report of how many animals the rescues are taking from the ASCMV, would there be any, could you see a process in which, rather than going, like when you're talking, I know this is probably more directly to the owner surrender more than the stray, but if there was a process in which they went direct, all animals went to the ASCMV, and then the ASCMV coordinated with the rescues to determine where these animals could go. So if there was a coordinator within the ASCMV that could say, okay, I've got this, we have this much, so that way, I guess the idea is that they're not bombarding everybody at once. They come to the ASCMV, and then it comes out, kind of spreads out from there, rather than them coming to the ASCMV, not being able to go there. Now they're going to go to all these other partners to see if they can take it. So they're not getting, I guess what I'm asking or trying to clarify here, those rescues are not getting animals, not just from the ASCMV, and also people, they're not getting hit from multiple directions. They're only coming from the ASCMV. Yeah, and I understand what you're saying is that we would kind of act as a hub, and so the rescues would all come to us instead of getting phone calls from individuals. And the issue I see with that are several, is that the whole reason to do this is population control, is to keep the center population down and the quality of care that would be given. If we're taking animals hand over fist, and the ones that would have gone into a rescue, and it takes rescues several days to come in and take more, that would just be more animals that we're holding on to. Sickness would go up, our numbers would skyrocket. And also, I know it sounds silly, but rescues, they choose what animals that they can take. And I know Michelle with APA will tell you right off that a big pit bull will not move nearly as fast as a cute little fluffy Shih Tzu dog. And also the size. It's a lot easier to hold on to that Shih Tzu fluffy dog and not as nice or not as easy to hold on to a large breed dog. So what I'm getting at is that rescues would come in and they would take all the easily adoptable ones and leave the bigger ones because they know they can move them faster, whereas that means that they can come and get more from us. But in the long run, that leaves us with large breed animals. And this way, when people are calling them, they're cutting us out and less work has to be done. Okay. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you pulling together this presentation, because I know they said, as Commissioner Allen said, noted, we've been getting emails from the rescues, and I just want to make sure that have the opportunity to understand what is the process that is followed by the ASCMV, and I absolutely welcome these emails, because I think that's been one of the discussion items that we've had, is having that direct input or engagement from the rescues, making sure that the board understands the issues that they're seeing, so that not only are we aware, but if there's any decisions that we can make and discuss with the ASCMV, with you, to make sure we're making the best decisions for not just the ASCMV, but also the community as a whole.
Absolutely, and I want you to know that I don't mind these emails or phone calls at all either. In fact, I got a phone call from Frank Bryce with Humane Society of Southern New Mexico. several weeks ago, and one of the things he said is, I don't even know if these have a found animal report done. How do I know they're coming? And mind you, that's on stray animals, and they shouldn't be receiving stray animals, but I took that back to a manager's meeting, and we incorporated that as part of our intake process for these stray animals that are coming in. So, yeah, we got something from it, from these questions and phone calls and emails that are coming in. So I completely 100% concur.
Okay. If there's no other questions right on this specific topic, I did want to move to the second part, which was around the presentation and how we want to move forward. I know during the previous meeting, there was, I'll say, lukewarm or just mixed input in terms of trying to create a subcommittee specifically for community or rescue engagement. After kind of thinking back and taking the input and just the thought, and I just want to make sure that if the board agrees or might have input on this, where, I think as we had in was it May, where we had Safe Haven that had provided us a presentation, we can move forward maybe in that vein, and where we can have a different organization come and present to us directly, and then, so we would come up with I guess what I foresee is that we would have a calendar over the year where we can identify a different organization to come every month to the ASCMV board meeting and present. And one of the options to look at what might be, those that take the numbers based off of what Mr. Thacker presented, maybe, using those numbers to, I guess, identify kind of, the top 12 or something of that nature in terms of those that take or engage the most with the ASCMV, or at least give them priority. Like, say, for example, I know, like, for example, Best Friends, Broken Promises, APA, I think those are just some of the ones that I had seen, but that was just the thought, was trying to figure out how do we figure out who gets on the list or how we present, was to look at those that take specifically from the ASCMV.
Are you requesting input from us at this point,
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, correct. I want to see if that would be a plan that seems feasible, or would you all
Well, you really haven't presented a plan.
Well, so the plan is this, is that we have, so the plan is this, is that we come up with a calendar for the next year, or at least a schedule, where we have a rescue every month that comes and presents. Now, to determine how to come up with the list would be, my thought is that we use the numbers that Mr. Thacker had provided, showing those organizations that engage the most or take the most from the ASCMV in terms of animals.
Well, if we're going to do it over a calendar year, that would be 12 meetings, because we meet once a month, and that would be 12 organizations. And I don't know how many there are. Do you know, Clint, or?
There's more than 12.
There's more than 12. And we can limit the presentation. I know that when Jean was doing them, Jean Gilbert, she was covering all of them. So the presentations would necessarily they would be less than the time that Jean was taking, and we can limit the presentation to 10 minutes perhaps. How many organizations are there? Do you know, Clint or Frank? Do you know how many organizations? No? But say there were 24. We could have 2 organizations. I agree with the concept totally. I think it's wonderful. I think it's good to have those organizations, and we could limit the amount of time. Many presentations, we do that for council meetings. People are told they have 10 minutes, and then they'll go 15 minutes, which is okay. Sometimes it's not. No. But I think it's crucial. And then is it Elaine or Eileen? Elaine, yeah, that's what I thought. And then with Elaine doing that write-up, because some of the emails we received were, frankly, all of them, I think, were well-intentioned, but I don't think they were accurate as to how the center functions. And I didn't respond to them only because I don't have all the information, and I don't think it's my position to be responding to individuals. And then Clint thought, well, a lot of people are on there. And so there's when we're barraged with things, and we really don't, I mean, I don't have the precise answer, and I can't, when they're saying that the center doesn't do this, why isn't it doing it? And it's very demanding, and it's and it's kind of like, well, maybe I should just delete it. And then I don't, and let it sit there. But I don't reply to it because I don't feel that I'm the appropriate person. I can't speak for the board. I can't speak for the center. I can't speak for the city. So I think it's good to have. I think keeping the public constantly educated as to the processes at the center regarding owner surrenders versus strays. I mean, it's going to be a message that just goes out all the time. But definitely having rescue organizations come to present, absolutely. But I think we could do that. Our meetings are scheduled for 2 hours, right? Or sometimes we've gone till after noon.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that. And so I think having the multiple organizations and just provide them a time limit, like you're saying, I think would be a good idea.
Do you think we have more than 24, Clint? Yeah, so we can do 2 and then limit each presentation to 10. It won't be because, I mean, Jean did a fantastic job presenting on behalf of all of them, and she didn't take up an hour and a half to present. So I think it's doable. Okay. That's my humble opinion.
Well, I appreciate that input. Thank you, Councilor Flores. Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. I also agree between the new information that we're getting from Clint with the actual numbers that each rescue is taking and providing an inclusive type of policy to invite the rescues. I think that takes care of most of what was presented, I believe, from the coalition. The only area that I would say we'll need to think about if we are considering policy changes to be direct with perhaps seeking out input from those rescues if it does affect those areas. And then the second portion is, and I think Councilor Flores mentioned it, is that when we have information that is disseminated between different parties, we have members of the public, we have rescues, and we have the center. And sometimes with members of the public, it is an educational piece. So if they're in a moment where they're having to take an animal in, obviously it's going to be stressful. If they're not getting a natural just yes answer, here's the animal, I know it can heighten emotions and how they feel that they've been treated or that customer service is. And so having those public process type news articles and just to walk through those things, I think would be very helpful. I think it shows good faith for our rescues on these are our processes that we are telling people, and then hopefully the public will be a little bit more aware of what to do as well in those situations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So whatever, I guess based off that input, then we'll just look to, I guess in the next meeting in August, then we'll look to schedule two organizations to come in, present if they're able to, and then we'll limit that. So Clint, I think, can we work on that one piece of it, or maybe we can work offline, maybe, and try to figure out, give it a shot and see which organizations might be able to make it. I know that some of the groups are not always able to make the middle of the workday as it is, but maybe we can try that out and see how it works.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. Majority of these rescue groups, they all have full-time jobs. I can only think of one, maybe two, that actually have hired individuals that work for them. APA and Humane Society of Southern New Mexico are the only two I can think of that would be able to do that. What we can't do, though, is I have the ASCMV created a rescue Facebook page. It's private. So we can just put on there if anybody would be interested in signing up. That way those that honestly want to come and present can do so. I'll do 2 spots per period, and whatever fills up, we can see what fills up, and then have hopefully a whole calendar year out there, and then send reminders as it gets closer for that. I look forward to it, to see what specifically these rescue groups are doing to not only help the ASCMV, but also to help the animals in our area. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you. I was going to suggest that perhaps if the rescues are not able to attend, if they also wanted to make just a slide or 2, just explaining what they wanted and submit that. It's something that probably could be read. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to ask many questions specific, but if they did want to have inclusion, that could potentially be another way to do it, and just keeping it brief.
I think this is an excellent time to bring up Zoom meetings. A lot of these individuals, like I said, work full-time, but they would be able to get off during the day or during early morning, lunch break, and we're talking 15-minute break at work isn't that hard to obtain. Jump on Zoom and then present it. I'm a big supporter of Zoom meetings, and I wish that the board would continue to look forward to this possibly continuing as a Zoom meeting. It's much more comfortable for all of us to be able to present or be wherever we're at. I know Mayor Pro Tem Gondara thought this was a Zoom meeting, and so had made plans to attend it via a Zoom meeting, much more flexible, capable. Talking to the city media department, they love Zoom because when we do this in person, I don't know if you all know, but they have to zoom in on each person that's talking, so they're constantly changing screens or changing cameras to make sure those individuals are covered. I would request that we go back to Zoom meetings. So that's just me, but thank you.
Thanks, Clint. And I'll say, one of the options might be is that there's an opportunity to go hybrid. That's something that I know we've done in the county where those that attend in person, we're still doing with the cameras here in the chambers or in the commission chambers. But then if someone joins remotely, we can see them on our screens in the chambers as well. So, I don't know if there's an opportunity to do something of that nature where it's a hybrid in that way, like you're saying, Clint. If somebody had to join remotely, they could, and then we can still see them, and they could be part of that webcast as well.
Yeah.
So, Councilor Flores?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I know that here at City Council, if we are, I have participated in meetings when I've been out of town, when I've been in New York, when I've been other parts of, whatever. And the participation has been a call-in. So we do have that capability here at City Hall to do call-ins. And insofar as your request, I'm a firm believer in meeting in person. I think that, I can see you nodding, but if we were in Zoom, then I think maybe you're frowning or saying, oh, I hate that counselor, who the? But seriously, just meeting in person, it was so good to see Mary Lou, and it was, because I'd seen the other, other people, but I hadn't seen, I saw Becky yesterday, and that was wonderful. I've seen Eric, because he's just down the hall from me. And it's just a good feeling. I think that there's that human factor. You go home to a wonderful family of 7 kids and a wife and dogs, and I go home to a needy dog who just, when I'm on Zoom, all of a sudden she's, barks at anything she hears outside. And but the human factor, that interaction in person. If for example, this is open to the public, Frank is here, it's wonderful to see Frank. And then we get to meet Elaine in person, and we hadn't met her. So I think there's a lot to be said about meeting in person. In many ways, yes, it's more convenient to be sitting there. I wear shorts and then maybe a nice top. For those meetings, but I would definitely encourage our meetings to be in person. with the option of calling in. And I know that in our housing committee, PRC yesterday, Councilor Gandara did have the option of, actually she did join us, but then she lost connectivity. So that's going to happen, and that, we've had too many fiascos in terms of, this not working or that not working or, whatever. So enough said. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Vice Chair Bithstupi?
Thank you, Chair. While I'm awful at technology, I do love it. One of the items I do think during this time, I chair other committees that have actually thrived off being on Zoom, especially when we're asking for inclusion from members of the public or members from even Santa Fe. This week, I did specifically ask those same questions if we could stay on Zoom. From our city clerk, I did pull it up, that they haven't heard anything from the AG's office regarding the Open Meetings Act, so all meetings should now be public due to the state restrictions being lifted. With that in mind, though, I do think it would be great for us to look to see what I think a new future might be, and if the AG has any modifying items for the inclusion of kind of a hybrid mode that we could include Zoom with maybe public meetings. And I think of this for two reasons. One is accessibility, and as we've seen, there are a lot of different reasons why one person may not be accessible to a public meeting, and so we can have a more inclusive environment if we're able to do a hybrid mode. And so I would suggest, I know I'm going to be pushing forward into seeing if there's any way we can do those adaptations, and I would encourage you all as well.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Okay, so Clint, at least for now, we'll go ahead and look, like I said, for the August meeting, try to include two organizations, and then we can work and see how, if they can, we'll figure out the logistics of it. And one last thing, at least until we can get, like I said, if we do have the ability to maybe do a hybrid, but in the meantime, the one other option would be if they want to record a video with their presentation, just like they do with Zoom, they can have them, it may not be, like I said, the interaction might not be there, but they can also submit a video, record it while they're talking all through their slides, and at least, we could have that piece of it as well, so that might be another option, but we'll move forward, and we'll have two organizations next month. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go back to discussion item 5A. Mr. Saffel, were you able to get in touch with Mr. Garner?
Yes, I was. So once again, Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Josh Saffel, and I would like to present Mr. Chris Garner as he presents the Audit Entrance Conference. I will get this open on our screens, hopefully. All right, Mr. Garner, anytime you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I apologize. I was actually waiting to be let in Zoom and didn't realize that this wasn't on Zoom anymore. So what I have here is the presentation that auditing standards require that we make during the planning phase of the audit. And so Josh, if you could take it down to the third slide, the introduction. I have listed myself and then Heather Lucero, who will be the two in charge of your audit this year. It's the same, there are the same folks that did it last year, and so we both will be repeating on your audit. There is going to be a section a little bit later when we go over some of the, what we call the development of the risk assessment. And this might not be the correct forum for some of those items that I'm going to bring up to be talked about at this meeting. And so Josh and or Josie with the City Finance Department both have our contact information, both the cell phone numbers and email addresses for us. So if anybody has any questions or comments that they want to discuss after this presentation, feel free to give us a call. Josh, if you go to the 5th slide. So the first thing that we're going to go over is the audit timing that we're required to talk about. And so at this point in time, we're in the middle of the planning phase of the audit, which has at this point in time happened remotely. And what we're doing during this phase of the audit is gaining an understanding of internal controls, testing those internal controls, and also walking through transactions. And so we will go through and continue that part of the audit through the end of July and maybe a little bit into August. Additionally, the New Mexico State Auditor requires that we test certain compliance issues. For example, we're required to look at travel and per diem, procurement, the use of e-cards and travel cards, and there's a list of quite a few items that we are required to expand our testing on based on the state audit rule. And so we're in the process, again, of also testing those. The other thing we're doing right now, which really shouldn't have effect on your organization, is we are planning for any single audits that need to be completed. What that relates to is federal grants. Certain federal grants have to be looked at and tested a little bit differently than our regular audit procedures. It's a compliance audit. But again, that most likely will not affect the organization. The last bullet point under planning is risk assessment. And that's where the board has the potential to be involved and help us develop our audit plan. With the risk assessment, based upon the internal control testing and also other testing during the planning phase, we go through and we develop our risk assessment to determine what are the audit procedures that we're going to complete to get the audit done. And so how you can play a role in this is if you have any concerns or things, and again, we'll finish the presentation today with some of the items that you could give us input on and contact us. So once we get that information based on, any information you give us, any information based upon succession management, and then our testing of internal control, we will complete our risk assessment and determine, what audit steps will be performed. So that, again, that part is happening now and will probably be completed during the audit, during August. The next phase of the audit is field work, and this timing is very similar to the prior year. We will come back in September and October and complete our fieldwork testing and test the ending balances and test all of the accounts based upon our risk assessment and complete all those audit procedures. With the end goal of getting the financial statements to the state auditor by the end of November. Your financial statements are actually due December 1st. And so at that probably October, November time frame, management will give us the drafted financial statement, and we will review them and kind of go over any changes that we might have, again, with looking at having the exit conference middle to late November so that we can get the audit submitted to the state auditor. The next section that the auditing standards require we talk about is auditor responsibility and also your responsibility. So the first slide that I have here is talking about our responsibilities under auditing standards. So as you can see in that left-hand box, what we've been hired to do is express an opinion on your financial statement. And what that means is, in the right box, is we're giving what we call reasonable assurance. We're not giving absolute assurance. And so what that means is that we're not looking at every transaction. We're testing controls. We're doing statistical samples. We're looking at various things, but we're definitely not doing procedures and looking at every transaction. Therefore, our audit could have some errors in the numbers that are in the financial statement. However, those errors will not be big enough to change the opinion of the readers of the financial statements. And so, as you can see in that right box, we talk about our opinions that state that the financial statements are free of material statements. And what that means is if you were to take your financial statements to a banker and those errors would not be big enough to change the banker's opinion of the financial status of the organization. The next slide talks about our responsibilities under government auditing standards. And this is more commonly referred to as the Yellow Book. And with a Yellow Book audit, which is required to be performed by the New Mexico State Auditor, every audit that's done in our state has to follow these standards. And with these standards, we have to look at internal controls a little bit differently. What we have to do actually in a regular audit is just gain an understanding of internal controls, and then we only have to walk through one transaction for all the various cycles. And that's all that's required. With a Yellow Book audit, we actually have to take samples and test those internal controls. But what the Yellow Book audit does, we issue the report that's included in your audit. That report just spells out how we're testing items a little bit differently than are required under audited standards. And as you can see in that left box, those procedures, we do not issue an opinion on internal controls. The only thing that happens in that particular report is we spell out what we do a little bit differently. And what our responsibilities are in the right box is to communicate any significant deficiencies of material weaknesses. Those have to be included as findings in your report. In New Mexico, the state auditor has actually taken that threshold and said that even if findings don't rise to the level of a significant matter, you still are required to report those in your audit. So during our audit procedures, if we come across anything, basically the level for that is the ground floor. If we have any exceptions or any issues, in accordance with the New Mexico State Audit Rule, those have to be included in your report as a finding. And so, again, New Mexico State Audit Rule is a little bit more stringent than the Yellow Book standards. The next slide, Josh, if you can go down to that. This one talks about your responsibilities under auditing standards. And so it's probably been a good 10 years since the standards have changed and really emphasized that the financial numbers are management's responsibility. And so as you can see in that left-hand box, management is responsible for providing us trial balance and numbers that meet our standards that we have to follow. It's what we more commonly refer to as GAAP. So management has to make sure that all adjustments, all entries, and all the postings have been done so that the numbers are in accordance with GAAP. And so this includes that management makes all the management functions or takes responsibility for all those numbers, and then also takes responsibility for all those adjustments that have to be recorded in your trial balance and the numbers that we get to audit. As a part of that, management is also responsible for implementing internal controls to ensure that those controls are properly safeguarding assets. And so, again, that is your responsibility as an organization to ensure that all that is happening. Josh, if we go a couple more slides down to the scope. Auditing standards require that we talk about what is the scope of our audit. And as you can see here, there are 6 different entities or 6 different things that we will be testing as a part of our audit. First of all, we'll be auditing the City of Las Cruces. We'll be doing South Central Solid Waste Authority. We'll be doing the Downtown KID, the Animal Service Center of the Mesilla Valley, your organization. And then we'll also be doing Mesilla Valley Regional Dispatch Authority and Metro Narcotics. During our audit of all these different organizations and JPAs, we will be issuing 5 separate audits. The Animal Service Center will have a separate report and a separate audit that will be completed and submitted to the state auditor. The only one that doesn't have a separate audit list will be the downtown kid, which is a component and it's a separate fund reported in the City of Las Cruces' audit. Other than that, all the other 5 entities, including yours, will have separately issued financial statements. So Josh, if we go down to the next section, 2 more slides down, we just want to talk about communication. In order to have a successful audit, it's really important that we have open communication, not only during the audit time, but also throughout the year. And one of the tools that we use during the audit time is what we call a status update. And what that does is that allows us to have open communication with management, which will show them the items that we're still pending and waiting on. We'll kind of show the status of items that we have completed for our testing. And then more importantly, and one of the most important functions of this is just to communicate potential findings. And the reason I say potential findings is sometimes when our staff completes their work, they have gone through, and maybe visited with one employee who might not have all relevant information. So therefore, what happens is we make sure that we're all on the same page, that management is aware of any findings, so that they can let us know if maybe there's another control that has been established that we weren't aware of that might deal with the issue that we have. And so, again, this just gives the opportunity to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're all in agreement that if we do have a finding, that it is a valid finding, and make sure that, again, we all agree. Josh, if you go to the next slide, the one thing I do want to point out that's very important is in accordance with the New Mexico State Audit Rule, and I've got a couple of citations here, the board or management cannot publicly talk about the status of the audit as far as, whether we're going to have a clean opinion. You can't talk about any potential findings. None of that can be made public until the audit has been completely accepted by the New Mexico State Auditor. So what happens is the New Mexico State Auditor, we submit the audit report in draft form. They go through and review that draft, and then they give us any feedback. And once they give us that feedback, it's called an okay to print letter. We will address any concerns that they might have, and then there's a few more documents that we have to submit to them at that time. And then they go through and review the final report, and then once that's done, they will issue a release letter. And then 5 days after that release letter, then it is a public document, and those items can be talked about. So as we use the status update, I'd really just like to emphasize that even though it's a tool that we use throughout the audit, it has to stay within management, it has to stay within the city. And those items cannot be made public until once the audit is completed. Josh, if you'll go down 2 more slides. We've got a few slides to talk about audit rule changes this year. Really, there's nothing that's very significant that's happened in the audit rule for 2021. Those first 2 bullet points, there was a lot of clarification and added wording just to make things a little bit more clear, but really didn't have an effect on what we as auditors have to do to complete your audit. That second bullet point just talks about how payments are able to be made to firms. They did change the rule to where now higher percentage can now be paid once the audit has been, the draft has been submitted to the state auditor's office. So again, there's a little bit of a change there. And then Josh, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll start talking about the 2 last bullet points. And so in the rule, the New Mexico State Auditor now allows us to be your auditor for 8 years instead of 6. And so, again, this is just a change that really is going to affect how the audit's completed. It just has the ability to retain auditors for 2 more years than was allowed in the past. We go to the next slide. The state auditor did change testing in accordance with the retiree health care contributions that have to be made by your organization. And so last year, the New Mexico State Auditor changed what we had to test your retirement contributions into para. And so what this rule does is just matches the retiree health care with those para contributions. And so last year, the state auditor determined that one of the things that they felt was more risky is when we don't make payments in for certain employees, and those contributions for certain employees are not done. And, there are actually lots of valid reasons why each employee would not have to make a contribution. But what the state auditor wants us to do is make sure that those that have been excluded are properly excluded. So we will test a sample of excluded employees to ensure that they meet the criteria for those exclusions. And the reason the auditor feels that this is a little bit more risky is that your organization, if there's an employee that's been excluded and doesn't make the contribution, what happens is it gets found out maybe 10 years down the road. You would be responsible for not only the employee's portion, not only your portion, the employer's, but also the employees. And so that would be an additional cost that you would have to incur if later on you found out that employees were improperly excluded from making contributions. And so they've determined that's the risk they want us to address. In the past, the risk that they felt was contributions weren't being properly made, and so we tested that for quite a few years, and I think their exemptions have been pretty minimal over the last several years, so they wanted to change the focus on what we're looking at. So that's really all the changes that are as a result of the changes to the state audit rule. Josh, if you go down a couple more slides, we have one new standard that has to be implemented, but the standard relates to the acquisition of an organization where you would have 100% control in that organization. And so that type of transaction, as far as I know, has not happened this year. And so therefore, this really won't have an effect on your organization during the audit. So there won't be, there's not a big effect that's going to happen with this new standard as a result of the type of operation that your organization has. Next year, there are a couple of significant transactions that we've actually already started having a little bit of talk with the finance department on the effects of those new standards, but this year, the accounting standards that have been changed are fairly minimal. So Josh, if we go down a couple more slides. I talked about the risk assessment and how the board can have an influence on that, and we'll talk about that here in just a few moments. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure and let you know that, if anybody gives us a call or brings up any concerns, that information will be kept confidential and will only be used to complete our risk assessment and to develop our actual audit steps that we will perform during the audit. So again, the last section that I'm going to bring up some of these items, this is probably not the right forum if you have certain concerns. So please contact either myself or Heather, and just know that information will be kept confidential. So Josh, if we go down 2 more slides. And these items, again, are items that we would take into consideration while performing our risk assessment. So if anybody is aware, management, the board, of any of these items, we would like you to contact us so again we can find out specifics and we can adjust our audit plan. But the first item is material-related party transactions. So if there were transactions that happened with any of the board members, maybe a board member has a business that the organization has some transactions with, we would want to be made aware of those items. Just because those type of transactions happen doesn't mean there's an issue, but we have to get an understanding of what those transactions are, how they were approved, and just make sure that, that there's transparency and that the individual that has that conflict of interest has refrained from any involvement with the approval of that particular transaction. The other thing that potentially could happen is if there are material transactions, in accordance with GAAP, we would have to disclose those in the footnotes to the financial statement. So again, if anybody has any concerns with any related party transactions, please let us know. The next item is fraud or concerns of fraud. So even if you don't know that fraud happened, but you might have a gut feeling that maybe something's just not quite right and that you have some concerns with fraud, again, please let us know so that we can incorporate those concerns and look at the internal controls regarding those transactions where your concern is so that we can follow up and again, address our audit plan related to those items. If there have been any special audits, either by any state agency or any federal government agency, we need to be aware of those audits and we'll have to get copies of those. I know the internal audit department has been, getting some reports and some testing done this year. We will automatically be talking with them. But if there are any outside parties that are not a part of the city or of any of the JPA that comes and does a performance audit or a special audit, please let us know so that we can get copies of those and incorporate that to our risk assessment. The last bullet point is just kind of a catch-all. I mean, if there's a transaction type or an internal control process, like maybe such as cash receipts, that causes any of you any concerns, again, please bring those up to us. We will look at those and take those into consideration. And so, again, any type of concern you have, we want you to contact us and we will adjust our audit plan and make sure that we address those issues. With that, I'll open up to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garner. Are there any questions for Mr. Garner? Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris. This is Councilor Flores from the City of Las Cruces. And my question is, if we have any questions at all, we go directly to you because this board does not have its own attorney. Or would it be, would there still be that confidentiality if we went to our respective attorneys, either for the city or for the county, or do we just go directly to you?
Thank you, Councilor Flores. You can come directly to us. We did have in the prior audit, and maybe not necessarily related to this JPA, but we did have folks that came directly to us and that information remained confidential. So you can contact myself or Heather, either one of us directly.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Any additional questions for Mr. Garner? Commissioner Allens.
Just as a matter, this is Commissioner Ellens from the county. As a matter of curiosity, do you represent the South Central Waste Authority?
We are the auditors for the South Central Waste Authority, but we don't represent them.
All right. Well, you've answered my question because I knew I'd heard this presentation recently because I'm on the board of the South Central Solid Waste.
Yes, sir. We did present the same required communication to that board. I think it was last week.
Frankly, 2 weeks in a row is withering.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Allens. Okay. Any additional questions? I am not seeing anything, so Mr. Grunner, thank you. Appreciate the presentation. And Mr. Saffel, thank you very much for guiding the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to the agenda for action items, section 6A, which is resolution 2021-06 for fiscal year 22, grant funds carryover and budget adjustment. Before we get into discussion, can I get a motion in a second?
Second.
And moved by Commissioner Allen, seconded by Councillor Flores. Okay.
And good morning, Chair, members of the board. William Blanchard, Budget Analyst, City of Las Cruces. And before I get into the presentation, I have to let you know that I am making an amendment to this resolution. I handed the new resolution out to the Secretary earlier this morning, and she gave each of you a copy. In the first go-around, I had increased some grants when I should have decreased them, so I have to say sorry for that, but I fixed it, and now we are moving on. So the resolution before you is to carry over some ASCMV grants and to adjust 2 other grants to actuals. We are increasing the budget for the Carol Petrie General Operating Support Grant. This grant came in after the fiscal year 22 budget was already completed, and we are increasing both revenue and expense by $150,000. We are decreasing the budget for the Carol Petrie Foundation COVID-19 grant by $6,010. This reflects spending that occurred after the fiscal year 22 budget was finished. And we are also decreasing revenue and expense for the Maddie's Fund Pet Foster Care Grant by $3,888, once again, because this is spending that occurred after the fiscal year 22 budget was already complete. And with that, here are your board options, and I will stand for questions. And if you have more in-depth questions about the grants, I will defer them to Mr. Clint Thacker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blanchard. Are there any questions on what's presented? Commissioner Allen, see your microphone. Did you have any questions? Okay, good. All right, there's no questions. I think what we'll need to do is have an amendment to update the resolution as per the pack, or the resolution as presented here. So can I get an motion to amend resolution 2021-06 as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Bates-Stuvey. I will second the motion. So we have an amendment on the floor to adjust as presented. Are there any questions on the amendment? Okay, can I get a roll call on the amendment, please?
Board Member Enriquez?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens?
Yes.
Board Member Ward?
Yes.
Board Member Bates-Stuvey?
Yes.
And Board Member Sanchez?
Yes. Okay, the amendment is approved. So we're now back to the resolution 2021-06 as amended. Are there any questions on the resolution? Okay. Can we get a roll call on the resolution 2021-06 as amended?
Board Member Enriquez?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens?
Yes.
Board Member Ward?
Yes.
Board Member Bates-Stuvey?
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez?
Yes. Okay, the resolution is approved. Okay, we're on to public input. Are there any members of the public that would like to provide input? Mr. Bryce, come forward. And if you would, state your name for the record.
Frank Bryce, President of Humane Society of Southern Mexico. You probably noticed I was chomping at the bit to get up here and talk a minute ago. I've got 2 items I'd like to have a little extra time on. One is particularly on the issue of stray referrals. When people go to the shelter and they're given that piece of paper, what I would like to recommend, and I've tried to make an appointment with Mr. Thacker and talk about it, we haven't quite accomplished that yet, is when they come in, get somebody from the staff, volunteer that's qualified to at least evaluate the animal, see where it needs to go. Whether if it's a big dog, go to a big dog organization, a little dog organization, cat, and not just hand that piece of paper out and send them out the door. They do go out with, quite often when we get to them, we hear that they've been told that they have to do this. We have been told that they have to hold the animal 72 hours at their home. I'm not sure that's even a legal thing to require of a Good Samaritan. So we need to make another protocol for when animals come to the shelter. If they can do a very quick evaluation, personality, health, what is the direction we want to go with that animal, that would be a big help. It is very difficult for all of our organizations on the field to get a call and say, we're full. We're full, we're full, we're full. Then they have to take it back to the shelter, and the shelter says they'll take it after you do all this. We need that little transition from the shelter and the Good Samaritan to the organizations, that we don't all get blamed for not being able to respond. And believe it or not, even if the person calls on all of those little numbers, people don't answer the phone. They're not there. Not all the organizations are as available as some of the others. We have a system where we take calls 24/7, and we do a lot of rescues at night when there's really not a place to take the animal. We help them do that. But we need that little transition from your organization to the Good Samaritan to us, so that we all don't get blackballed in a way. We're not responding. Because a lot of people, when they talk to me, they say, nobody answered. And then they got to go back into the shelter if they're still there, or they take the dog and a cat and maybe do something else with it. That's on the stray, and I think we can come up with a protocol that says, hey, the shelter can do a very quick evaluation, figure out which organization is best suited or is even appropriately suited for them the person to call if you want them to do that, or they call. I personally would prefer the suggestion that they take the animal in at the shelter, do the evaluation, call the organization and say, do you have room for it? If they don't, then they have to keep it at the shelter. You don't take a chance on the person walking out the door with that animal and turning it loose on the street, cause the animal to get hurt, cause that person to get hurt, even cause an accident by turning it back loose on the street. And then the other one is on the spay and neuter. There was a big article, I hope you all read it, on spay and neuter. We'd like to really commend that effort. We've been trying to get that effort started for quite some time. I will say this, and I'd say this in all honesty, I'm very pleased with the way your board is working. The things that are happening at the shelter are positive. We've got a ways to go, but we need to get that spay and neuter up to speed. And right now, most of the organizations are taking their dogs to private organizations, private clinics. We take ours to Anthony, actually, because it's so much more cost effective. But that's a long ways for us, cost us money. If the shelter would consider how we could do it legally for them to get the dog in, the cat in, do spay and neuter, and then give it to the organizations to do whatever they need to do. They take responsibility for the maintenance of the animal. It's whatever health issues are associated that they can't handle, and do it that way. But we need to have a little bit different program on spay and neuter. Although this is a great start with what's going on. And I apologize for being kind of anxious about getting up here. I've been waiting for 2 weeks to have some meetings with people, and apparently some things have happened that I was not told about that probably has a good weight on moving this forward. And I appreciate your patience with me, but we need to keep doing this spay and neuter, and then straighten out the stray release issue so that people don't walk out of that shelter with a dog in their car and know, what the heck do I do with it? And just to give you a good example, even if we did all of that, we still have some issues with hours of availability. I got a call the other night, a young woman taking charge of a dog on her bicycle. She was traveling through this, and we met over at Mayfield High School. I loaded her bicycle in the back of my truck, put the dog in there. We couldn't get an answer out with the it had a microchip, so we scanned it. We couldn't get a call. We actually drove to the home, beat on the door next door. That's where the people were at. We got the dog returned. But the after hours is still an issue, and hopefully we can continue to manage it like we do. And just so you know, and to give us a little bit of credit, I think we have just passed 15,000 microchips that our organization is responsible for, and we're doing between 100 and 150 a month. That all gets them back home quickly. Don't even go to the shelter, hopefully, if we can find it. But anyway, I appreciate your patience with me. I would like to have a little results on our conversations for spay and neuter and for strays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jones?
Frank, what is that article on spay neuter that you showed us?
It's in the Sun News.
Is it today's Sun News?
No, it's Sundays, last Sundays.
Okay.
It's the issue of homeless animals attributed to lack of spay and neuter. That's not a big secret, folks. I'm a little irritated about this development, but it's a development in the right direction. So you have to look at the good parts and the bad parts. We've been working on this. Our organization has been working on this for over 20 years here. It started out with the free spay and neuter program, and it morphed into where we are now with HSS&M. But we still need to get it done. We need to get a cheaper, cost-effective way to do it. And on the stray, the TNR, I found 2 places last night with 60 cats each. I knew one, and I thought they had told me they had 30. It's actually 60. And then I found another place that has 60 cats, and they're not doing anything about it. We've got to figure out a better way to reach out and pull those people in to get the cats taken care of. And the shelters have been doing a great job. I cannot commend them enough on what they're doing with the stray cats, with the TNR. We need to have a little bit more availability of services. Right now, I think it's 2 days a week, and they're kind of irregularly scheduled, so it's a little bit difficult. But the shelter has really improved. Let me say this, and this sounds kind of phony in a way, but it's not. The board has improved over the 20 years that I've been coming to this board, and the shelter has certainly improved. We've got some improvement to make, and we're going to help make it the best we can. And I appreciate your tolerance of us coming up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce. Okay. All right, I don't see any additional public input. All right, we're on to chair and board comments. And I'll start by saying we have a birthday girl in our midst, Councilor Flores. Happy birthday.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a year older today. Thank you.
So we wish you a happy birthday. Are there any other comments from the board? Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Frank Bryce for coming to my house. For your comments. They're well taken. And for coming to my house to change the contact information on Edie's chip. And he does house calls. So, so the word's out, Frank. You're going to be barraged. No, seriously, thank you very much, Frank. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flores. Anyone else? Okay. All right, we're on now to the adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call on the adjournment?
Sure. Board Member Enriquez?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens?
Absolutely.
Board Member Ward?
Yes.
Board Member Beto-Stuve?
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez?
Yes, thank you very much. And before I just want to add that our next meeting is August 26th, 2021 at 9 a.m. So we will see you all there. Thank you very much, and this meeting's adjourned at 11:29 a.m.